This show is proudly sponsored by TraderCobb.com, the leaders in checklist-based trading strategy. Yes, that's exactly how it sounds. I'll teach you a literal checklist so you can tick off items and be decisive very quickly. Get across to TraderCobb.com where there's a bunch of free content there for you to have a look at. And of course, if you're interested in having me come to your city, click and register for the live events coming up and filling fast. Have a great day. Visit TraderCobb.com now.
The Trader Cobb Crypto Show, talking business in blockchain.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Trader Cobb Crypto Show. We've got a returning guest. Yes, that's right. I met this gentleman in Dubai at the WBS event out there. Met some great people after spending some time with Aly. It's Aly Madhavji, who is the managing partner of the Blockchain Founders Fund. He's coming to us from Singapore. This is a man who travels all around the world, speaking at all the different conferences. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he sees that's going on in the space right now. So thank you so much for your time, Aly.
Thanks so much, Craig, for having me back on the show.
Mate, I've been looking forward to this because, look, there's no one I know that travels as much as you. You are at all the events, man. You're speaking to a lot of people. You're very connected in this space. Where have you been lately? Where have your travels taken you?
So all over the world. So I do travel 100%. Been back to North America already this year. Been in Europe and in the Middle East, and also across Asia. So, anywhere from, South Korea to Singapore, Taiwan, a second time as of next week this year. Even some of the work that we're doing with blockchain in mainland China, the Middle East, and around Europe and North America with some of the work that we're doing with the United Nations. And then we've got portfolio companies in 5 continents. And so it adds up to quite a bit of travel.
They must look at your frequent flyer card when you walk up and just go, whoa. You must be like a rock star to the travel agents.
It's definitely not too bad, I have to say.
Mate, you're a busy man. There's no doubt about that at all. So first question about where you've been. I mean, obviously, look, we've seen price go pretty crazy. The last week or two, it's really kicked into overdrive. But since about, what was it, back in April, we saw that break up through 4,500, and we kind of been looking at a much more positive market since then. Of course, 6,000 didn't blip. There was no sell orders there. I was watching it, thinking everyone's talking about 6,000, but no one's acting because there was no orders there. And we've continued to see the market drive and move forward in terms of price. Have you seen? Is there any, I guess, city at the moment in your most recent travels, as the market has started to come back looking more bullish, that have been, I guess, more interested, more excited, more involved, or anything along those lines? Like who's at the forefront? Who's the most excited at the moment out there across your travels?
I mean, we're definitely seeing from, where we've been recently, a lot more interest for sure. I mean, conferences are having more and more people show up at them. I still don't think it's the same as when we were in the peak, but you are seeing, pretty full crowds. You're seeing a lot more interest as well from traditional funds coming back in and looking at the space more closely. So we are seeing that a little bit. There's been, of course, a lot of conversation with, major announcements related to blockchain and cryptocurrency. I mean, the Facebook thing with Libra, you've got businesses that are not even blockchain talking about it, right? And so these sorts of things are definitely adding a lot more interest. And then you've seen an emergence again of IEOs, similar to ICOs, getting a lot more strength, in recent months. So that's another case where you're seeing continued interest coming into projects in that way.
And what's your thought? I mean, you talk about traditional funds starting to be a lot more interested in the space, and I guess that sort of coincides with what I've been seeing, which is the CME futures volume increasing. For funds to get involved properly, they need to have a derivative product that's got some volume. Otherwise, they can't hedge themselves and they can't effectively work within a market, especially not a market that does carry so much volatility. I mean, even if they're going to look to have a small fund of funds, inside of the space, let's just say it's $100 million, which is it's small in traditional land. They need to be able to get positions that are going to hedge themselves. So the CME volumes going through the roof recently has been a really positive thing for institutional involvement in my eyes. When you're having these conversations with these types of fund managers, what's their biggest issue around entering into the space, and what sort of things they're looking out for?
Yeah, so there's a couple of points on this. So before I get to that, I mean, there's of course both the cryptocurrency side and playing on that side, and then there's funds looking at getting exposure as well to the blockchain side, and that they don't necessarily need a different mandate, right? So
Yes.
there is both of those parts to be conscious of. But on the cryptocurrency side, I mean, you are looking at, of course, better custody solutions, and Coinbase, and there's been a number of other like BitGo and other solutions have been doing a decent job here, but I think there's still a lot of opportunity for world-class level custody solutions that is still being built out in this industry. So that's definitely one of the challenges. I think one of the other reasons why there's been this increased interest in cryptocurrency, and I think has really coincided, or in my opinion, propelled the price of Bitcoin, has been essentially these trade wars and the slowing economy and concerns around essentially what's going on globally. And I think that's definitely having an impact on creating additional nerves on the economy, additional concerns on potentially certain wars that might be looming, and increased printing or quantitative easing, which you're seeing certain federal or central banks now changing their policies a little bit around, interest rates, and even looking at, whether or not there might be further cuts, et cetera. So there's a lot of factors at play that are coinciding with additional increase, especially in Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, actually, because people often they talk about Bitcoin being a hedge. I think that's probably maybe a too strong a word to use. I mean, a hedge is something that you were willing to go into quite heavily. Like gold has been a hedge, and we've seen gold move as well, very strongly. As a matter of fact, gold has had a very good surge lately. Again, around the conflict situations and whatnot, we see interest rates continue to drop. You meant to rise interest rates in a strong economy, so it's a worrying sign. And it's not just like, if I talk to Australia, when the GFC hit in 2008, we had interest rates about 7.5%. So we had a long way to cut to survive it. Of course, now we're getting down into the lowest interest rates we've ever seen in this country, and across Europe and in America, we're seeing very, record levels. Also, records set by low interest rates. It doesn't bode well for the future with, massive stock market gains and massive debt. Do you think that there is the possibility that if there is a perfect storm, and I suggest that there will be some catalyst event that will drive the prices down, I can really see another quite special, wrong word, but a big event as far as in our history of markets, because they don't tend to go up for this long, for as strong. They need to have pullbacks, and something's going to give. Do you think there's a possibility that we could see a lot more money coming into Bitcoin and the crypto asset space if we were to see that war with Iran kick off and a few other things just tip the balance slightly? Do you think we'll see a flood of money coming in, or will they just go to cash?
I personally do think that there's growing tensions globally that will actually propel Bitcoin. And we've actually been talking about this for years on a looming recession in the US that could, be very severe, but then also increasing wars, and, no end in sight really on this debt ceiling and where it's going in the US and a number of other countries, right? And so personally, I do think that is a big catalyst. And when you do have one of these things really hit and settle in, I think that a lot of people are going to be looking towards Bitcoin as a way to diversify, right? And when you take gold, I think it is also an interesting and useful tool for diversification. So I'm not actually against necessarily the gold trade either. The one problem that you might see sometimes with gold, though, is the companies that mine gold are actually susceptible to the exact problems that they're trying to hedge against, right? So if you talk about a global financial crisis or another crisis, the companies actually mine gold will have a liquidity crunch because they won't be able to access credit to actually fund their operations, and therefore may actually shut down even while the price of gold may theoretically supposed to be going up, right? And maybe going up. And so this is where it's a little bit odd when you look at how gold hedges essentially the economy, but the gold companies are actually susceptible to that economy.
Yeah, which I suppose would drive the supply and demand even higher and make gold worth even more for those that own physical bullion. Because I mean, if you own the physical, well, you've at least got your gold. If I own shares in a company, I own part of the gold that's in the ground, but that gold's in the ground. So I'm not going to go get my shovel and start digging for it. So it's an interesting perspective to bring that. Yeah, like if we did see financial Armageddon of sorts, yeah, those companies are going to be, due to the same, they're going to have the same risk as every other company because the company's a company.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be really interesting to see what actually goes on there. So that's quite fascinating. Now, you've also obviously been around for what happened with Libra. Now, I want to talk to you briefly about that because I know you're pretty switched on with all things technology, and also you speak with a lot of people about it. I'm sure it is the buzz at the moment. It's about as good a promotion of our space as you possibly could get. It's legitimized and brought back to the attention of a lot of people. Now, they're probably doing their KYC and their AML right now. So we might start to see some of that money trickling in over the next few days. Who knows? But it's a good thing. What do you think about Libra itself and Facebook, right? The company that knows more about me than I do. What do you think about them going into the financial system of sorts, I suppose?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's both exciting and, can be concerning at the same time, right? So I think it's exciting for this space to see, a major company, basically try to push cryptocurrency to the forefront. I mean, personally, I've been seeing people that have no idea about anything about blockchain or cryptocurrency, and companies that have everyday workers talking about, what Facebook's doing. So there is that benefit. I think the challenge is questioning whether or not this really follows the principles of a lot of the cryptocurrencies out there, right? And so this won't be borderless. I mean, you will have, of course, restrictions on transferability, and you won't probably be necessarily owning your own, coins if they say you don't, or if someone wants to step in like some sort of regulator. And so so there is still some challenges with this. I do think it will also be more difficult than maybe people perceive around Facebook's ability to really I think they'll do well. Obviously, it's a big company, they've got big presence, but I don't think like overnight it's going to be, Libra coin is everywhere across 100 countries. It is actually, we do a lot of work with actually the United Nations on financial inclusion and trying to help bank the underbanked and unbanked. And one of the important parts is going to be, actually getting this to cash, right? And cash points are actually very important when you start talking about unbanked and underbanked. And this was one of the key things that Facebook said they're trying to tackle, right? And so, I mean, it'll be interesting to see whether or not Facebook looks at partnerships with companies like Western Union to get cash points or other types of companies. And then the remittance market, of course, is something we're working pretty closely on, and this will be a key part of this, right? And one of the UN Sustainable Development Goals that we're working towards is to bring remittance costs below 3%. And you see in a lot of developing countries, this can range, to 10, 15, even 20% because of the fraud and other problems with remittances and then actually getting it to cash. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. But for Facebook to do this, they'll probably need to create quite a few partnerships, and that'll mean that there'll need to be pretty reasonably high fees still to actually fund that entire system. And so I wonder kind of still where it'll exactly fall in terms of, affordability and, maximizing the amount of money for the people that need it most, right? When they need to pay for their kids' education or need to pay for food on the table or those sorts of things. So definitely keeping an eye to see how that plays out. And, we'll see. But at the end of the day, if it even helps millions of people and brings down the fees and makes the system a little bit more competitive, even if it's not, a full blockchain system, doesn't follow all the principles. If it is helping millions of people, I will still be a fan of it, right?
No,
I mean,
absolutely.
then we can work on doing even more and bringing, and bringing this down even more, which cryptocurrency in its true form would have the ability to, but at least this will give us a start. So it'll definitely be something we're keeping an eye on pretty closely, though.
And what do you think about the chances of actually getting it? And they're talking about 2020, which that's not very far away. Let's be honest. We're
Mhm.
back into the 6th month of the year. Can you believe that? You know, I mean, they've got to get it. It's like, I think 5 hours after they released the white paper, Congress came out to block it. No surprises there. They've got some pretty big battles to wage, right? Or is it that the Congress can basically say what they want, but it's like, well, we're our own company. We can do what we want within this framework. I mean, there's a lot of money they're going to have to spend even just to get the thing passed as being relevant or allowed. What do you foresee there? I can't see it being out in 6 months. I can see it taking a hell of a lot longer than what they first might have thought.
So I think it will take long. I think the advantage that Facebook has, of course, has that reach, and then they do have these partners already, right? So they got Visa as a node, I believe, and they've got a number of other companies like PayPal, which is, I'm ex PayPal, and so that they do have some interesting partnerships there as part of their nodes, and that they could kind of use to roll out in an expedited way across certain countries. But I do think one of the challenges is, of course, Congress, and I think the one of the things that I think not enough people are talking about actually is that statement, I believe, as part of their presentation, where they basically said that this is to replace the US dollar. And that actually adds a lot of risk, or it's going to be kind of the new digital US dollar, right? And I think that this adds a lot of risk to Facebook, obviously being a public US company. And
Silly
so
statement to make.
it is, right? Because there's not actually that much value for a public company saying that. Like if they wanted to do it, they could just do it. And then, that takes a long time, and, the world will kind of see later, right? But
They made their intent clear, too clear.
it may be, right? Because now I believe July 17th, they have a Congress hearing on Libra. And I'm pretty sure that the US is going to dig more into this. Not too many people have fared too well saying they're going to try to replace the US dollar in sorts of public roles, right? And so it'll be interesting to kind of follow what happens on that and how hard the US comes after it. Not necessarily only on that point, but they have a lot of other things to go after Facebook on that, could slow this project down.
So with the Blockchain Founders Fund, are you guys actively investing at the moment, or are you sort of positioned quite well and you're sitting back? And if you were to invest, what sort of areas are you looking at the moment from your point of view as being the next? I don't know if it's the next wave, depending on your investment outlook. But what sort of areas are you seeing as being of interest at the moment?
Yeah, no, so we actually have been quite active. So we've actually got two funds, and so we've got Blockchain Founders Fund. We've got another fund where we're an LP on, and we're soon actually launching a third fund. Over the last year, combined between our funds, we've had over 60 plus investments. So it's been quite active. In terms of the cryptocurrency side, we did actually spend a lot of time over the last year just to continue to accumulate more and more BTC and ETH, where we thought, there's a lot of value, and we saw those kind of being the leaders in a recovery. And I think that's worked out quite well so far with how that's gone over the last few months. And then on the other side, from the investment side, we're typically looking at equity in companies.
Yeah.
So it's equity in blockchain related companies. And so we're looking for, a lot of the standard stuff that VCs are looking for, and then the differentiation points that we have are looking for companies that we believe can transform their industries with very strong product market fit. So we want to make sure that these products actually have market validation. They are solving clear pain points. They have very strong tech teams to avoid major tech delays. And then we're looking at things like good governance and ethics. So we're making sure that they've got proper lockup periods or vesting periods on founders and executives, and these sorts of things that we want to make sure are instilled so that we're in for the long run, but they are as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, you're in the position, if you're taking on equity, where you can actually see what's going on. as opposed to a lot of people. A blockchain company doesn't necessarily need to issue a token. I just want to make that very clear to everybody that just because it's a blockchain company doesn't mean that they need to go out publicly to raise. They're not doing an IEO, an ICO, or whatever other form of raising STO pops up in the next 2 weeks or throughout this next run. It's an interesting position to be because you can actually look at it like a business, but it's very difficult to do on those token side of things. It is very much a speculator's market. I got no problem with that as a trader. That's kind of what I dig. That's what I do. That's where I make my crust, right? So I'm pretty cool with that. One of the things I'm finding interesting at the moment is that when this market moves, it's not really having a breath. It's not breathing. It's going up and then it's just holding for a little bit. It's not really having a proper pullback. Now, I've looked at some of the things like the Google Bitcoin trend. In 2017, we saw, of course, that spiked like an absolute mad dog. And since then, it's come right off and it still hasn't increased. So we seem to be a long way from that FOMO point. Based on that, it would seem justified that we could see all-time highs and some really spectacular moves leading into the end of the year. What are your thoughts around that? I know it's not really, I'm not asking for a price prediction. I'm just do you see this continuation with all things said that's out there publicly right now, and with what you know, are you able to sort of think to the future of a $20,000 plus Bitcoin in 2019? Yes or no?
Yeah, so we don't make price predictions, but we have come out and said from our internal side, the way that we're looking at it at Blockchain Founders Fund, because we do have pretty vast crypto holdings as well. We do think that we're looking probably at early 2020 to hit all-time highs. Of course, it would be great if it was before that. But we've been pretty bullish on this recovery, and even when people were very depressed, we were still at conferences, we were still spreading the word, we were still sharing a lot of the value, and we had a lot of our companies also heads down on just building solutions, right? And those you're starting to see really build interest, create value today, as a lot of these solutions are starting to roll out. And so it is pretty exciting. But of course, on the other hand, you've had a lot of mainnet delays, and you've had still a lot of companies that aren't, say, creating enough value for what they've raised out of their ICO. And so we're hoping to see more and more value created, getting rid of a lot of these delays. And I think as you start to see more of these products being able, these infrastructure layers, going live or improving their tools, you'll see more dApps essentially being built on it, which is really where anyone will actually interact with, right? Because they'll typically interact with, like the average person will typically interact on the dApp level. And so that'll help to build interest in this. And I hope that it's, not just this pump and dump type of spike, but we do want, good, long, steady growth in this, and not just, continuing past all-time highs and crashing back down. So
sustainable growth is what we want to see this time around. I don't necessarily need to see the market go straight up. I'm really happy to see it climb. Give me plenty of opportunities to trade. Parabolic moves they're much more difficult to read and be involved in. Look, even if I am already positioned, I've been positioned long Bitcoin for a while now with margin. It's been great, but I just want more. I just want to keep layering and layering, and that's how you make a big buck in a market like this. You don't know when you're going to get the trades, but if you take them and you scale out, you manage your risk, and it does run well. All of a sudden, you end up with a 5% total portfolio position long, and it's all in profit. You've got no risk. And then all of a sudden the thing moves $2,000 in a day and you are laughing all the way to the bank. So I would prefer for it to just slow down a little bit, give us a few more entries, start acting a little bit more like a market that we're familiar with. So Aly, look, it's been an absolute pleasure once again taking your time. Thank you very much. And look, where are you off to next?
So I'm off to Taiwan to speak at the Asia Blockchain Summit next week.
Wow. And where can people find out more information about you and what you do, mate?
Yeah, so definitely check us out on our website, blockchainff.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, Aly_Madhavji, and we can share that in the notes. And I know you also subscribe to this methodology, but the way that we always work is just working on accumulating more BTC and ETH in those terms and not in USD terms. We've been saying this throughout the bear market, and that's been our philosophy. And it's worked out well, but thinking about it in that term, I think is also very valuable for traders. And I know that's kind of how you tend to look at things as well.
That's exactly right. We've got to be trading to build our sats. That's the plan. And we can always bring it into dollars. So trade
There we
well.
go.
I can help you with that, ladies and gentlemen. Aly Madhavji, thank you so much once again for your time. Safe travels, and we will speak to you again down the track.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks,
All
mate.
right.
See you
Take
later,
care.
ladies and gentlemen. Have a great day. Bye for now. This show is proudly sponsored by TraderCobb.com, the leaders in checklist-based trading strategy. Yes, that's exactly how it sounds. I'll teach you a literal checklist so you can tick off items and be decisive very quickly. Get across to TraderCobb.com, where there's a bunch of free content there for you to have a look at. And of course, if you're interested in having me come to your city, click and register for the live events coming up and filling fast. Have a great day. Visit TraderCobb.com now.